Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365, and Azure Community webinar. My name is Ethan, and I am delighted to be joined this morning by David Parker, MVP from Visio Limited, UK. Today, David will be talking to you about how Microsoft Visio fits in M365 and Power BI. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSB and our hashtag is ESPC21. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com and click the content link at the top. Our 2022 webinar schedule will kickstart with migrating enterprise applications to Azure Cloud Native on January 19th, 2022. And in the meantime, please do check out all of our upcoming webinars for Microsoft Teams Week, which is taking place from December 6th to December 10th. We would like to also take the opportunity to say a big thank you to our webinar sponsors, Docs42 and Pointfire. And we are now just going to have a short video from our sponsors.
Hey you! In the session you will see all about the great options of the Microsoft technologies. But what about generating documents in the Microsoft ecosystem? Like quotes, reports, emails, PowerPoints, and others. The challenges usually are many different data sources, an intuitive design in Microsoft Office, and of course generating the documents where the user needs them, in SharePoint, the Power Platform, Teams, or Dynamics. Docs42 can do all of it. Try now yourself.
Hi, I'm Martin from Pointfire. This year I was hoping to entice you with a booth, games, prizes, giveaways. Instead, we have this short video to show you how we make the multilingual page publishing feature even better. It's so easy, the demo only takes a few seconds.
With SharePoint's new feature, your staff still has to translate each page manually. By adding the Pointfire translator, the pages get translated automatically for your approval. Go to try.pointfire.com for a free trial or contact us for a demo.
Today we will have a questions and answers session. Please type any questions that you have into the questions window, and questions will be selected and answered at the end of this morning's presentation. The webinar will also be recorded and added to our resource center. You will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to this morning's webinar presenter, David. Good morning, David.
Good morning, everybody. Now then, I've just got to make sure that I share the right screen with you, which I believe I'm going to be doing up on here in the sharing. And let's see, I think you're all seeing my screen already. Great. Well, so this morning I'm going to be talking to you, as the title says, about how Visio fits into M365 and Power BI. And hopefully you've all heard the great news that there is an entry-level free version of Visio now available with M365 business subscriptions. So let's move on. Who am I? Well, you can read who I am. Suffice to say, I've been doing Visio for a long time, since the mid-90s, and in all that time, I've always been linking it to data, because for me, that has been one of the key capabilities, whether it's been Visio creating data or visualizing data. And the reason we have icons is that we respond to that visual stimulus, I think, a lot quicker than just words alone. And that's where Visio comes in, because it helps you to understand the information a lot more clearly. So what we're going to do in this presentation for about the next 40 minutes and then some questions is, first of all, I'm going to explain the different offerings for Visio and how that fits into M365. And then we're going to look at some of the close integration aspects of Visio, in particular with Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, and with Power BI. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can go further and be more of a power diagrammer, which can be of great benefit to others within your organization who may not be using the highest levels of subscription for Visio. And then a little wrap up, and hopefully we'll have time for a few questions at the end. So buckle up, and hopefully I don't talk too fast for those of you who are not native English speakers. So about Visio. Hopefully everybody knows what Visio is now. It's a vector data diagramming system. And now that you've got it available with M365, I trust that will mean that there's going to be a lot more people are going to be using it as their go-to source for creating visual information. There's quite a lot that's in there, as you'll see, out of the box if you're just an M365 user, but you'll get more if you actually subscribe to Visio and be what's called a Plan 1. And then beyond that, there's the Plan 2, which is installed in your Windows desktop. But the whole purpose of Visio is to communicate ideas and communicate the context, the real life context, perhaps, of where you are seated. I started by doing floor layouts in banking dealer rooms and linking that to a Sybase database. I did the desktop layouts, did the cable management of many organizations, but the most used aspect or diagramming type, if you like, is organizational charts and process flow diagrams and network diagrams. And you'll see where that fits into the tools that you've now got available to you. So Visio is used across an organization and across many industries, through many different roles. It's very difficult, and I've seen this with the salespeople at Microsoft and before that at Visio. It's very difficult for them to target one particular area within an organization because it's used by so many. You speak to the IT department and you've got people who are using it for network diagramming. You speak to HR, they're using it for organization charts. Speak to facilities management, they're using it for desk layouts. So it covers a lot of different areas, and increasingly it is used within Power BI to create dashboards, for example, where you need to have the operational intelligence linked to your data that you can't see with the out-of-the-box visuals in Power BI. So let's look at Visio and where it sits within the M365 world. Teams, well, hasn't that come on in the last couple of years? And we've now got the ability within Teams to not only view Visio diagrams, but to create Visio diagrams straight out of the box. So all the business M365 subscribers have now got the capability of creating Visio diagrams within Teams and collaborating on those diagrams with others in the organization. Power BI, the Visio visual has been around for several years now within Power BI, which gives you the great ability to link, for example, maybe org charts are drawn in Visio, floor plans, or any other hierarchical diagrams, maybe a network diagram or process flows to data in Power BI and have that coexisting with all those great Power BI visuals. Power Automate, the Microsoft Flow, that is a logical conclusion, if you like, that you have the business analysts actually trying to work out how the business should be taking steps and creating processes. And then you've got the technologists who can actually create Power Automate flows directly from those diagrams. Believe it or not, you can just go straight into flow from Visio diagrams, and that can be done in one of several ways. Excel. I think everybody's used Excel, and Excel is, I think, the closest to Visio within the Microsoft 365 family. And why do I say that? It's because it is about data as well. It's about, in Excel's sense, quite often it's about financial data. And everyone, I think, has played with the the worksheet in Excel, where you can enter in some simple formulas, like for adding up the numbers in a column or in a row. Visio has got a similar feature within it, and that's where it gets its smartness from. It has a shape sheet as opposed to a worksheet. And like Excel, it has these cells that you can add formulas into. And we're going to look at that a bit deeper later. PowerPoint. Some people think that Visio is PowerPoint on steroids, but it's not. Visio is much more than that. PowerPoint is a tool I'm using right now to present to you. PowerPoint does things that Visio can't do, and Visio does things that PowerPoint can't do. So they are cousins which live together, and now you can, with the right subscription of Visio, you can create PowerPoint presentations directly out of a Visio diagram. Word, probably the most used application in M365. And let's say, for example, you wanted to create documentation of a process flow within Visio. Well, now you've got a simple button which will export into Word and give you not only the diagrams or parts of the diagram, the process flows, it'll also give you some of the data that's associated with it too. OneDrive for Business. Now, the subscription levels of Visio actually give you some extra OneDrive for Business storage capacity, which is where you want to be sharing those Visio diagrams so that you can collaborate on them and share them with other users, share them securely. And Azure, well, there's a lot of planning to go on, isn't there, in the Azure world? And so the subscription levels of Visio give you a whole new load of Azure templates and stencils so that you can diagram that infrastructure, whether it be real or virtual. So let's look a bit closer now at the Visio product offerings. So I've already mentioned there is an entry level for M365, which is now available to all the business subscribers. But we don't want to forget that there are some perpetual licenses out there too. There's the Visio Standard, the latest version being 2019, and Visio Professional. So they've been around the longest time. They've been around since, well, in one form or another, since '92. And those are what are on that 3-year cadence, generally, of getting upgraded. But then you've got, over on top of that, you've got Visio Plan 2, which is a subscription level, and that gives you not only everything that's in Visio Professional, but more features as well. And it's continuously being upgraded. At least mine does. Every month I seem to be getting something new in there. Now, Visio Plan 2 also includes Visio Plan 1. Visio Plan 1 is the Visio web application, which is more than you get in the M365 version or Visio for M365. But that is also continuously updated and offers you a whole load of business diagramming capabilities. So let's move on and have a look. How does this all happen? Well, the first thing to say is that there is a common file format between all of those, whether it be the web applications or the desktop applications, or indeed the Visio file viewer, they all share a common file format, which is based on the open document XML structure. And the normal extension, if you like, is the .vsdx. The .vsdx does not hold any macros in it and can be edited in all those Visio endpoints. There is a macro-enabled one for those users out there who like to do macros, and that is the VSDM, and that can never be edited within the web editors because macros can't be used within the web because macros use VBA. Okay, but you'll see that the file format is generally shared across all of them. I'll talk about where macros should be later. So you don't need to do any import or any conversion, with some caveats, as I will explain as we go through the webinar. As I mentioned, the subscription versions do give you some extra OneDrive for Business storage capacity, but if you're working within the Teams SharePoint world, as I'm sure you all are, then you've already got some, and you've got all these Visio endpoints, and I've included the Visio file viewer, which is basically just the Microsoft file viewer, which can handle Visio documents. That has actually got a JavaScript API, and that file viewer can be used within SharePoint pages and within Teams apps, and can be interacted with using JavaScript. So that's something to be considered. Now, if we look at the Visio and M365, as you see, all it needs is a qualifying subscription of M365, and generally that is all of the business editions of it. The Visio web app, you pay a little bit more per user, either per month or annually, and that gives you more capabilities within there. Then you've got the Visio desktop app, which is with the Visio Plan 2, which is everything that's in standard and professional, plus more, as I've mentioned already. And that gives you even more capabilities, and that gives you some add-ons and add-ins capabilities within the Visio desktop. And we'll see that the Visio desktop app can be suitable for power users, and those power users can create some more powerful diagrams for the Visio web app and the Visio in M365 users to consume. And if they do it in the correct manner, they can be editable by those users too. So wherever it's been created, the Visio file viewer will be able to view it. So that's not a concern. Using Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive in the center there, then you've got that extra document management and security, and the ability of collaborating between different users and adding comments to Visio diagrams and even to Visio shapes individually. So thinking about the capabilities of Visio, I put the Visio desktop app there at the top because it has the most. I've got the Visio and M365 there at the bottom because it has the least. But even in M365, you will see that there is Visio smartness. There is smartness in some of those shapes, the way that they behave, for example. Some of them will have some right mouse menu actions on them. Some of them will have some control handles on them. These are features that are added into Visio shapes that you cannot edit within Visio M365, but you can use them within M365. Visio web app has more capabilities, and we'll show you the difference in the diagramming types in a moment between those. And so you get up to the Visio desktop app at the top. So my green arrow there is saying that whatever you create at the bottom as you go up that funnel is going to be usable and editable on the way up to the very top there. The yellow or amber arrow coming down again, which is a bit like snakes and ladders, this, isn't it? We've gone up the ladder, we're coming down on the snake. Now, that is saying that with caution, you can go in reverse. You can, if you don't add in anything, the extra smartness of the higher levels, you can edit at the lowest level, if you like. So with caution, you can have a complete round tripping between these different endpoints in Visio, but you can always go up, and you can go, sometimes you can come down. So let's have a look at a comparison of Visio. In the M365, you can see it's got some red dots down the middle there. And I'll just pull you up on a couple of things. Notice, for example, that you don't get any extra storage with the M365 because assuming you've got some there already, whereas it's actually possible to buy the Plan 1 and get your extra gigabytes, 2 gigabytes of OneDrive for Business, even if you don't have M365. And then you've got the Visio Plan 2. As you can see, it's got a lot more dots going on down the bottom there, which is into the power diagrammers capabilities. So you can notice, for example, that Plan 1 has got some extra Azure and AWS network diagrams capabilities that you don't get within M365. And there are some other subtle chain differences that we'll highlight there in a moment. But those business diagrammers using the web app have got some great capabilities there. We've got obviously the ability to share diagrams, and you can export diagrams if you wanted to into PDF or image file formats as you're going through, because not everybody has Visio outside of your organization, perhaps, and not using M365. So you may want to, but if you do it right, you can actually host Visio files and provide links to them, which they can then consume within the within the Visio file viewer, as you'll see some examples on my website. Getting down into Plan 2, you'll see that there's a lot more going on there, more capabilities, including the ability of installing Visio on up to 5 PCs, because Microsoft understand that, like myself, I have multiple PCs. Traditionally, you might have a desktop at work, and then you've got your laptop when you're traveling around, but it's actually maybe slightly more than that. So you've got that capability of installing up onto 5 PCs, right? You've got more integration going on and capabilities of interacting between the different M365 applications if you have Visio Plan 2, as we'll be seeing in a moment. You've probably noticed that there are over 250,000 shapes throughout this ecosystem, and there's a lot more going on within many Visio partners who provide a whole load of custom shapes, if you like, that are available to you. So there's a lot that you can do with a Visio Plan 2 that you can't do with Plan 1, and then there's a bit you can't do with with M365 that you can do with Plan 1. In particular, let's have a look at some of the diagramming types that we've got here. Specialized flowcharting types is one thing that you can do in Plan 1 that you can't do in M365. Let's look at process diagrams, process flowcharts. You can do simple ones in M365, but you can do cross-functional ones, sometimes called swim lane diagrams, within Visio Plan 2. So there's a slight difference there between the two. And you've got more of the networking stuff that's in Plan 1 that you don't get within the M365, as I've mentioned. And then as you go on into Plan 2, there's a lot of things you can do with Plan 2. I've already mentioned maps and floor plans, which is where I started with Visio. And then you've got some specialized flowcharts, if you like, things like Six Sigma. You've got pivot diagrams. You've got some capabilities importing or exporting into project if you wanted to. you've got a whole load of data linking capabilities in Plan 2 that you don't get within M365 and Plan 1. So for me, it's worth it. And then you've got these shapesheet operations that you can do, and then you can, your power users can provide diagrams that are custom, if you like, for Plan 1 and M365 users. So what else have we got in there? Well, I think I've really gone through all these differences in there. The Visio Plan 1 has got a lot of the content was in Plan 2, but without any of the add-ins and add-ons that come with it and all these extra features. So let's shoot through some of the capabilities that you've got. Excellent exchanges. Excel, I say, is like the twin at birth, if you like, with Visio. And you've got this capability using the Excel data visualizer of actually having the two-way data linking between Excel tables and Visio diagrams. That now is available out of the box for process flow diagrams, but it's also customizable, as you'll see. So you can actually create your own templates and deliver them to your other users as well. Within the maps and floor plans as well, you've got the ability of importing assets and personnel from Excel if you wanted to. You've got, as I mentioned, the capability of coming in from schedules as well, and Gantt charts, which come in from Excel and from project, as I said. The org chart wizard in Visio Desktop, that comes from Excel if you wanted to as well. So there's a lot that's going on between Excel and Visio, and always has been going on. If there isn't a specific template, you can create your own templates. Right? There's a lot out there from third parties. Just a little bit of nomenclature here. A template is usually a workspace that's been saved in a particular single or multiple page Visio document, and it usually has some dot stencils in it. Those stencils contain symbols which we refer to as masters, and those masters that you drag and drop onto the shape, onto your page, they become instances. They're shapes which are instances of those masters. That is the traditional way of working with Visio, although you can actually draw just rectangles, lines, circles, ellipses, etc. as well. But everything you do in Visio has the shape sheet behind it, even if it's just a sentence that you want to add to as an annotation. It has got a shape sheet behind it as well that could be customized. So there's a lot around there that you can actually use to customize the Visio, and maybe you just want to have your corporate logo on there. So Excel, you can import quite easily data into Visio using well, there is a quick import. I like to use the custom import, which has got other data sources such as SQL Server and OLEDVC and ODVC. So you can bring that in from other sources as well. And SharePoint lists. They can also be brought into Visio and just added, data added to your shapes. And with some customization, you can make those shapes respond to that data. Or you could use the built-in data graphics that can show examples of your data. As you can see, what's going on in my little animation there. And I was writing some data graphics there, which is just showing the status of something, whether it be up or down, or it's got an alert, or it's working properly. Whatever you want it to be. You've got icons, you've got data bars in there, so you can maybe see a grading or a rating against particular shapes if you want to. So you've got this great capability of adding these data graphics into Visio diagrams directly. Now, those a lot of those can actually be automatically refreshed from the data as well. So they can just be used within SharePoint or within Teams, and periodically they'll be refreshed. And if you create it correctly, so that you've got the latest version of the truth always visible within there, within that Visio view, if you like, within the Visio file viewer, indeed. So that's one thing to consider, is that you really want your Visio diagrams to be as up-to-date as possible. And one of the best ways of doing that is by linking it to data, so that when the data changes, the Visio diagram changes. That's when you've linked your shapes to Visio, so into Excel or whatever data source, but you've also go the other way. You can use Visio to create data. Now, there is a built-in shapes report capability within Visio, which can output into Excel tables or into XML or HTML. So that's built in, or you can write code to do it. I have mentioned on the slide there is an old way of doing that data stuff, but that's not quite as up to date in the way that it uses data connectivity as the modern way that it's been doing it since, well, 2007 now. I say modern. You can also, as I say, export data. Now, that data doesn't have to be just the data that's in the particular shape. If you're writing your custom export of data, then that could include the connectivity between shapes and maybe the containment. What is a containment? Well, I mentioned swim lanes or cross-functional flowcharts earlier. Then you have steps, process flow steps contained within a swim lane. That swim lane is a container. And that swim lane can be within the whole frame that it sits in, and that is also a container. So, and then you've got associations. Associations are special call-out shapes in Visio. So these are extra shapes that are linked to shapes, and they're just associated with it. So you can export all of this information if you wanted to, if you use what we call a structured diagramming. All right, so that's all available to you with a little bit of customization. So Excel to data visualizer. Now I've spoken about the data visualizer and the fact that you can actually create your own templates. So all you need to do is start from your data visualizer, create something, choose a custom stencil, and then choose the export from the ribbon into a template. So, and that template is in a VTPX file, and that can be just delivered and installed by another Visio user, another Visio desktop user. And they will be able to then use not only the sample diagram that you've created, but the sample data, and they can expand on it. So that can be used to move away from the out of the box data visualizer diagram types that you're given, which is just a sample basic flowchart or cross-functional flowchart, and you can associate it with your own symbology or with some of the other stencils that are provided within Visio. Oh, I should also mention that within Excel M365, there is the free Visio Data Visualizer add-in. That gives you the capability of creating a Visio diagram linked in the same Excel workbook to data, and you can actually then either edit that table that the diagram is linked to directly, or you can repurpose it and use data that's coming in through Power Query. So you can create flowcharts and you can create organization charts with this free add-in in Excel. And if you haven't tried it, you don't even need a Visio license to go and try it. Just go and import it, insert it, and try it. And it's quite amazing. Word, as I said, perhaps the most used application with M365. And you've got this capability now to export automatically parts of your diagram And the sample that's provided with you is for process flow diagrams, where it will take the information that's within maybe swim lanes, and it would break it down swim lane by swim lane or by connections, and it puts it into a word diagram along with the data that you've got within those process shapes, which is using the shape data, into a Word document, which can be then examined and kept for reference as your documentation of your, in this case, process flows. What a wonderful way of quickly creating those manuals for a lot of your standard operating procedures. So you can control that if you know what you're doing. And you can set the snippet transparency, but you can also include or exclude certain parts of the diagram, certain types of shapes that goes out to it. And this can be set with a shapesheet formula. As I mentioned, the shapesheet is the source of Visio's smartness, which most users don't actually realize are there, but the power users should get familiar with it. PowerPoint. I say I'm using PowerPoint now. And if you've got Visio Plan 2, you've got this export to PowerPoint capability where you define rectangular areas within your Visio diagram. And that can be on multiple pages if you want to. And basically you can then export that directly into PowerPoint and complete with a smooth transition between those areas. It will then create you a PowerPoint presentation. You can give a title to each one of those slides, and those areas, rectangular areas, they're just Visio smart shapes, which suddenly appear when you activate that particular feature, and you can give them a title out of the box, and that will export and create you a PowerPoint presentation. I mentioned that Visio is customizable, so I took the opportunity of actually enhancing that PowerPoint export so that you can actually add more annotation and notes to each of those shapes, those rectangular areas, and include within it hyperlinks if you wanted to, and include within it a certain amount of formatting of lists, for example, and that can be exported out. I also corrected some current, let's say, aspect ratio anomalies that's within the export, where you may have to manually just resize one direction if it's not, if it is an out of the ordinary, if you like, rectangle that you've created. So I correct that and enable you to go out into PowerPoint with these annotations, with these lists, with these hyperlinks, and also to select which of the smart layouts in PowerPoint that you want associated with that. So it just makes the whole thing a lot more seamless and going out into PowerPoint. But you have got capabilities there out of the box and some extended capabilities if you so want by visiting my website. So that's my SS Plus add-in. Do a shameless little plug for that, but you can do standard stuff out of the box straight away. Power BI. It's a great tool, isn't it? Those of you who haven't used it, try Power BI. And the way that you can link to virtually any source of data, and Power Query used to reshape that data into a form that is understandable and usable, or by using DAX as well. And those two features are available within Excel too, which is also fantastic. But what Power BI gives you is the business intelligence dashboard, refreshable dashboard that's there for you to see how your business is operating at the moment. What Visio can do is bring in those visuals that you haven't got in those standard charts that you've got within the Power BI store, if you like, and bringing in all those visuals. So there's a lot you can do with a Visio visual. For example, you can link shapes. Now, these being vector in Visio, those shapes, they don't what called pixelate when you zoom in on them, for example. And you can link shapes in a manual way just by clicking on it. You can link to those shapes by the text that it finds within those shapes. This is the linking the data to those shapes. Or you could, if you wanted to, as I usually do, is link it to a hidden shape data value, so that you have the ability of automatically linking, in the example that you can see on the screen here, the person shapes in an organization chart, and the same person within the floor layout. So what Power BI can do is then add labels, and it can add in some color by values to those shapes within the Visio visual. Generally, I would recommend that you grayscale your Visio diagrams and you simplify them so that the data from Power BI becomes more visual and becomes more powerful and more impactful. What this enables you to do is move beyond the business insights that you might generally get within the dashboards that are created within Power BI generally, and moves into the operational insights that you can get from that real world context of the Visio diagrams, which may be for a factory floor layout, maybe for a shop layout, maybe for, in the case that I was involved in, for seating layouts within organizations' buildings. Sequence diagrams, you saw an example there. Well, you've seen many examples I've been showing of flowcharts, for example, but there are many other types of sequence diagrams that are not available within other visuals within Power BI. A lot of interconnection diagrams, and an org chart or a network diagram, these are interconnection diagrams, which you may not have the data to generate them automatically, especially when you're thinking logically about the connections between maybe virtual components. You can visualize them within Visio. You can create connections within Visio. You can bring the data in from almost anywhere using Power BI, and you can powerfully link the two together. And then you can overlay those Visio shapes with labels that comes from the data, and even some pseudo data bars that come from that data as well. And you can use color by value to color those Visio shapes and to zoom into those shapes from the data. Extremely powerful. I've got some examples that I've put up on screen for you to see how this can be done on the web, generally available for everyone to look at. Right, take a breath here. We've gone through and we've looked at some of the ways that Visio integrates with other aspects of M365 and with Power BI. And you've seen the capabilities, hopefully, that we've got in the Visio for M365. And then you can pay for a subscription for Visio Plan 1, which is still a web-based that can be used anywhere on any modern device, any modern browser. You've got that capability. And yeah, you can then have the Plan 2 that brings you up to the level of being a power user. All right, so that power diagrammer has got the ability of assisting all those other Visio users within the organization by creating some custom diagrams that they can be using in their business. So even though you don't have great customization capabilities within M365 or within Plan 1, you do have those capabilities within the Plan 2, and then they can be consumed and used by the other users. So just want to explain a little bit more about the anatomy, like, of a Visio document. So a Visio document contains multiple pages. And those pages can be different sizes, for example, and different orientations, landscape, portrait. And you've then got the list of masters that are used within that document. And we have a document stencil. So every Visio document has a document stencil in it, and that contains a list, or it contains all of the masters that are used. So even if you've got 100 people drawn in your floor plan, they could all be just instances of a single master. And if you do this correctly, you can customize that one master, and all of the instances get automatically changed according to what you've done within the master. That master stencil, document stencil, is there within the Visio Plan 1 and within the M365. It's there within the web. You just can't see it currently, but it's there. So you can create custom masters if you want to. And that is the key for how the power users can assist, if you like, in providing diagrams for the less power users, if you like, within the organization. To assist with this, I have created a series of articles about all of the shapesheet functions. Right? Now, what's important here is that even though you cannot have custom add-ins or add-ons in the web editions of Visio, you can have custom shapesheet functionality within shapes. All right? So most of the shapesheet functions going through from A to Z that's available within Visio are still usable and still present themselves in a way that is visible to those users within the web editions. So you can go to my website, and I've got this whole series of articles going through all the shapesheet functions and explaining visually what they are. But there's also some Microsoft documentation on this, going through the functions, sections, rows, and cells. As I mentioned, very similar to an Excel worksheet. Other things you get within the desktop is this macro capability VBA. But you do need Windows for that. You do need a Plan 2 license to use that. Within Teams and SharePoint, you have got a JavaScript API that can be used to read the information, and you can create integrated web pages that way. But there's no VBA available to you within the web editions. Okay. Other things you can do with the desktop edition is create add-ins. Normally, Visual Studio tools for Office add-ins, Visto add-ins, and there's a lot out there, not only from myself, but from other third parties out there that can be made. But you can use the built-in VBA within Visio as a productivity tool, and that can be used just to help do things like maybe simply just count all the shapes of one particular type that you're using in your document. One of the reasons you might want to do that, by the way, is to check that you are actually fulfilling the 1,000 shape limit for use within Power BI. Right? But I've got a guide on that, which I'll give you a link to in a moment. Visio add-ins, as I mentioned, I've got some there which are available to you. The SS Plus I've mentioned, Layer Manager. You've got these layers within Visio that you might want to control, whether they're visible or not, whether they're snappable or not, whether they're editable or not. Multi-language text, ability of having multiple different languages against the same Visio Smart Shape, or against the page name. You can switch between them, and you can provide output in multiple languages from the same Visio document. It saves a lot of time. One thing I haven't mentioned is the validation rules that's available within the Visio desktop within Plan 2. You've got the capability of using some out-of-the-box rules that are there for example, for process flow diagrams, for the business process BPMN diagrams. There are some validation rules in there that you can check that you're conforming to standards, but you can actually create your own rules too. And so I've got a free tool and a book written about that as well, and how you can create your own rules so that you can be checking that some standards are being met. Right, I'm going to be wrapping up now. I'll leave this up for a while as I chat for a moment, because there are some URL links on there that might be useful. I mentioned about, I've got a guide, a white paper on Visio with Power BI, which you can, is a free download, and you can read that to see how you can be using Visio efficiently, or preparing a Visio diagram for consumption within Power BI. Right, and that is extremely useful. Thing for you to know that there are some limitations, but there's some ways that you can get around those limitations as well. As an example of that is be able to use a hash layer, which will reduce your shape count considerably. I've also got a white paper up there on accessibility in Visio. Because we're talking here about visual information, we want to make sure that that visual information is as inclusive as possible for your users. There are more people out there, especially as I'm getting older, I realize this, who have trouble with their eyesight. And you might want to make sure that you're ensuring that there is a clear high contrast, if you like, between the text and the background color of a shape. You might want to check on the narration that comes out when you touch on a shape within the Visio, as it's either within the Visio client or within the web page. So that guide there is also free for you to download. You can also see there's some URLs there for you to be able to try Visio, either Plan 1 or Plan 2 if you haven't already. And there's a few other links there you can go and look at on my website, some case studies and some other resources, some learning resources on there on the web page for you to look at. And of course, there's my book that I mentioned. I've written 4 books about Visio, and that one is still relevant. They're all quite relevant, actually. But the 2016 data one is how you can create custom shapes that react to your data, primarily. So that's what I wanted to present to you, and I'm going to see at this stage if there are any questions that have come in from anyone. And if you have got any questions, please don't forget to type them in, and hopefully I'll be able to see them. I don't know if Ethan's still listening. I can see.
Absolutely, I'm right here, David. Thank you so much.
There.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. And as you said, we will we'll start the questions and answers part now. So if anyone does want to ask a question, please feel free to type it into the questions window. I have a few here from a couple of our attendees today. So we'll start off with, how does one learn to become a Power user? To understand more about Visio Shapesheets work, is there an active Microsoft community for Visio like there is for Power Apps or Power Automate?
There is an active community, and hopefully there is a Visio enthusiasts group, for example, within LinkedIn, where you should please go and join that. We did have a user voice until recently, but that's now been changed. And I believe the Visio enthusiast group in LinkedIn is where Microsoft have been putting in a lot of effort. There is also on Stack Overflow, for example, on Experts Exchange, a variety of other MVPs out there. I know Scott does a lot on Expert, Scott Helmers, that is. He does a lot on answering on Experts Exchange. There is an ex-Visio Corporation employee, Chris Roth, who goes by the name of VisGuy. He's got a website, visguy.com, and he's got a whole load of users on there who basically ask a lot of questions, and some other MVPs answer questions there as well. I answer questions in various forums, Microsoft Answers has been reorganized recently, and there's John Marshall in Canada who's answering questions on there, and we all sometimes get involved in those. I've got my website as well. Obviously, I've got a technical blog which I do. Sometimes I actually answer questions by writing a whole article on them, and I've got a monthly blog where I at least once a month get something out about Visio and how to do that. I've also got a resources page on there which give you links to a variety of learning resources and to these other personnel that I've been mentioning to you and the communities that they're in.
Great, thank you, David. Next question then. We are developing a Power App for staff to book into hot desks in the office. The data will be captured into a SharePoint list. Is it possible to embed a Visio diagram of the office plan or the desk layout into a SharePoint page and have desk availability on the Visio diagram dynamically update from the data captured in the list? So, for example, green or red.
Yes. The answer is yes to that. If you use your shapes correctly and data link them correctly, what you're suggesting is the way that I would recommend it, is that you've got Visio shapes which are being visualized within the Visio viewer, and they're using a refreshable data link, which, for example, using a SharePoint list could be. And so that can be automatically refreshable, either by a button or by a periodic refresh, which I think is every 5 minutes, or you could have a button there which forces the refresh, if you like. So yes, having, for example, a Power App editable component within your SharePoint web page and having the Visio floor layout, and you update the data within that component, it goes back to the data source that is being used then to refresh the Visio diagram, and then you should have what's occupied and what's not occupied. I think great for hot seating, for example, that we've got going on now, where you've got the hybrid work, people in and out of the office, and maybe you want to indicate they're out of the office and somewhere else, but yes is the answer.
Fantastic. And finally here, is there capability to expand Visio from Power BI into the rest of the Power Platform apps, like Apps and Automate?
I've already mentioned that there is Power Automate capabilities within Visio, and by that you can create your process flows, and you can then add in all of the Power Automate connections that you want and what needs to be done for each of those parts of the flow, whether it be a process or a decision, etc. And then you can export that as a template into Power Automate, where you can add in the detail. So you can go from the general into the specific that way. So yes, you can do that. Is that what's required there? The link into Power Apps, you cannot embed Power Apps within a Visio diagram. I don't think you'd want to. The way that the previous answer is that they would coexist, and that could be within Power BI, because Power BI has got a Power Apps component, and I have done examples of having a Power App component within the Power BI dashboard and having the Visio file within that Power BI dashboard as well. So you could use that to edit in that way. And going back to that common data source, so there's the one truth, and data, and Visio is being used as data visualizer in the way it should be.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. So I believe that's all of the questions for today's session. So just a quick thank you again on behalf of the SBC community to yourself, David, for taking the time today to complete the webinar. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And everybody will go out there and start working with Visio if you've not already.
Absolutely. And everyone, that is the end of today's webinar. As I mentioned, you can find this webinar and more at our resource center, sharepointeurope.com/resource-center. And thank you for joining us today, and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.